Eyes on Longmont, offering a diversity of topics about our community that will inform and entertain you. We invite you to sit back and enjoy this edition of Eyes on Longmont.
My name is Robert Morrissey. I'm the owner of Morrissey & Associates and the author of Iphoneography Pro. Join us today on our discussion on iPhone photography in this edition of Behind Closed Doors.
Okay, Robert Morrissey is the owner of Morrissey & Associates, a Longmont-based company that provides a variety of photography services, including still photography, video photography, and photo illustration. Robert's also written a number of books, including books on lighting and on iPhoneography, and he'll be talking about iPhoneography and a bunch of his other work here today. So Robert, there are a broad range of things that your company does. Can you give just sort of an overview?
Morrissey & Associates here locally does about 12,000 portraits. We're a portrait company under the umbrella of Portrait Division. Morrissey & Associates corporate does commercial and advertising photography and catalog. And then we also have Morrissey Motion, which does video nationally. So we actually travel all over the United States, up into Canada and down into Mexico, producing documentaries and interviews and small snippets for movies.
Okay, and today we're going to be talking more about some of your work with using an iPhone, which is pretty amazing work.
Well, the iPhone itself is one of those weird kind of devices that, you know, everybody says, oh, it changed the world by being this amazing communication device, which it did. And Google Maps has basically wiped out everybody from the ability of knowing how to read a map. But what it's really done is taken photography to this brand new level where every person that has an iPhone or even a regular cell phone now has a state-of-the-art camera on it. And so my publisher asked me to write a book on iPhone photography, and I decided to go out of my way to try and kind of disprove that it was a good camera, and ended up being blown away that it's probably one of the most advanced cameras out there on the market today. And so the photos that I took, there's a combination of landscapes, portraiture, illustration, and then photojournalism. I really wanted to test the camera in all sorts of facets, all the way from the commercial world to the everyday personal world of just being a photographer or being a citizen type thing.
Okay. And this photo here, what can you tell me about this one?
So this first image really gets into some of the ideas out here in Colorado of the big sky. I love the big sky aspects of things. And if you look at the very bottom, you'll actually see the just a portion of the landscape, and then you see this amazing rainbow sticking out. And on top of that, you've got the clouds and this flock of birds, and it just, to me, it literally blows my mind that the iPhone can capture all this motion, all these variables and colors, and just put it together in such a beautiful picture. I mean, if you look at the skies, there's 20 or 30 different blues in there.
This is beautiful. Is this a composite or a single?
No, this is one single shot.
Okay.
And the funny thing is, I was actually on my way back from dropping my kids off at school over at Meade, and there were a bunch of birds in the cornfields. And so I got out of my car, started throwing rocks in the bird fields, trying to get these guys to jump up. And they finally just exploded. And I was able to take, at least 3 or 4 pictures of this. And it's one of those things where you want to consider it luck as the photographer, but it shows how high-tech the camera really is.
Is this in Boulder County with an iPhone again?
This is in Weld County.
Weld County, okay.
And this is off the back of our property. Obviously, it's a sunrise. That's the East Coast that way, towards the sun. But it's a sunrise reflecting into the water, and you can see these beautiful ripples. And once again, this is really designed to test the iPhone. This is one of those things that you look at this and you think this has got to be an advanced camera to capture this many colors, these many darks. If you look right behind the trees, it's so bright it's almost white. That yellow is almost white, and it captures every single color as it meanders through the sky, and then you've got the beautiful blue just peeking through the clouds. And then you can see in the bottom in the reflection all the ripples of the water. And these are the images that start really convincing me that the iPhone can do anything you want it to if you put your mind to it.
And then in terms of post-processing, did you have to do?
Nothing.
Nothing.
This is straight out of the iPhone.
What's really interesting to me is that in traditional photography, somebody might use a neutral density filter on the sky to kind of make it go a little darker so that it matches the light that's reflecting off of the water. This includes all of that tonal range, all that dynamic range, even within a single photo. It is pretty amazing.
Well, and then exactly. I mean, these are those things where you would think, especially taking it with a DSLR or something like that, that you would have to do a little bit of work on it. You might have to bracket your exposures.
Right.
I literally pointed the camera, the iPhone camera, at this scene, clicked it, and was done. And once again, I went into the book concept trying to disprove that the camera was good. And over and over and over, all I did was have the iPhone tell me, this is a really good device. Nice. So.
All right, and this photo is from the same area?
This is exactly from the same area as the last photo. I wanted to see that difference of horizontal versus vertical. As I turned the camera, obviously more of the sky was in it, and also some mud. It was in it in the bottom left-hand corner. And being able to see the depth of colors grabbed by the iPhone and its ability to, it almost seems like the chip itself is determining exposure by different areas. Because the bottom left of this picture, it has an exposure of the mud that technically most cameras would miss. I think most photographers would miss. This in itself almost looks like, what do they call that when they do the 3 or 4 exposures at the same time?
The high dynamic range.
The high dynamic range.
HDR photography. Yeah.
And this to me really feels like high dynamic range photography, except it's a single shot.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And you said you've made prints out of this?
Prints out of this. I have a 20 by 30 of this at my house.
Amazing.
And it looks good. You cannot see the grain in it. And this is with the iPhone 5, 5S. So I do have a combination here of iPhone 5 and iPhone 6 cameras. But, yep. So this one here is one of my favorites, just because it kind of shows composition. And it shows that ability of, a lot of photographers run through the test or run through the skill set of trying to compose on the go.
Yes.
And so, do you notice the rock in the upper left there?
I do. Against the mud, dry mud background.
Yeah, exactly. And this itself, I mean, it's shot in black and white, which is nice to have that big giant screen and feel, so you're feeling the colors, you can feel what's going on. Get you in the mindset of shooting black and white, even though it still does shoot it in color. You can come back to it.
Okay.
But I love the composition I don't know what you would call it, composition test or composition, you know, where you go out, you definitely are trying to capture something in one frame. You're not going to edit it later. So this is unedited, this is uncropped, this is just what the camera gave me.
Gotcha.
And I really like the tonal differentiations of the textures.
Mm-hmm.
And just showed that, to me, the iPhone, once again, trying to make something simple, do a study on some composition, it just proved it could do a really good job.
And when you shot this, what you saw, the photo of the iPhoto was in black and white mode?
It was in black and white mode. And literally, it was great. You could just hold it, look, and start framing and take the picture. And actually, with this one, I took the picture with the rock in the upper left, rock in the bottom left, bottom right. So it was literally a true study of the composition.
Yes.
And this is the one I chose.
Right.
But I'm still, you know, even at this time, I'm blown away by the iPhone's ability to capture the granular structure of the dirt.
There's a lot of detail there.
Yeah. And I'm at a point with the camera at this time, it doesn't fail me while I'm doing at least landscapes.
Oh, this is nice.
This is that negative space type photograph.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And so, obviously the green in the middle is that negative space. But once again, holding the camera up, trying some of the filters. This is I want to say the cross processes, but it's more of the muted color.
Mm-hmm.
And just sitting in a field, actually on a camping trip, and was able to take this in just a minute or two.
It does some really interesting effects with the out of focus areas as well as
I like the
that are in focus.
I like the way it blurs.
Yeah, it's almost like there's a wind going through part of it or something. There's a sense of movement to this.
Well, once again, you look at that, because you judge a camera by its detail,
Mm-hmm.
and you judge a camera by its composition, or not its composition, by its exposure.
Yes.
And if you look at this, the detail on the weeds in the front is unbelievable.
It is, I agree.
And then you start really looking at the depth of color that it's capturing. It's kind of mind-blowing that it's on an iPhone.
Yeah.
It's probably not so mind-blowing nowadays because more and more people are starting to really understand this is a really great camera.
Mm-hmm.
But it was definitely, these are tests that push it and let us know it's good. What do you think of that one?
What do I think? It's there. It seems to be. I would think about using it as a texture for something else. Actually, there's a lot of texture in the foreground and then nothing in the background.
Believe it or not, that's fog
Ah,
in Weld County. So we get some seriously foggy days out there.
that's seriously foggy.
And I use the cross-process filter. And so once again, it's a compositional study. This is, if you start really looking at what I've done here on the rule of thirds, I've put lines in unusual places in the rule of thirds because that line where the fog and the ground actually meet is just below. It's it's right kind of in the middle of that
Right.
2/3 mark,
Yes, it is.
but it's lower. I would say the line right here, and I don't know how to right there.
Pretty much a third.
That is, yeah, that's the 2/3 mark,
Okay.
or 1/3 mark. And then putting the line of the road in at that bottom area really gives it a heavy weight towards the
Very
bottom.
much so.
But once again, photographing, if you look at the actual density of the fog in its color, it's exposed.
It's and there's a great deal of detail in the foreground.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen with normal cameras, this kind of stuff, it just blows out.
Yeah, completely.
Or you're spending 20 minutes trying to get the exposure and you're done.
Yes.
It's like the fog's already gone.
Okay.
And usually if you're taking pictures in the fog and the fog leaves, you had a hard shot. But once again, I just stopped my car. I took this out the window of my car. So I did straighten it. I did do that. But other than that, it was just straight composition from the camera. Once again, a test at seeing what this camera could do. So this picture here is not really that pretty, but
It's shot right into the sun.
it's shot right into the sun, in the snow, with water, with clouds, with fog. Your camera should have failed.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think I keep this one literally because photographers know by seeing this shot that your camera would fail.
Just with snow and sun, it would
Right?
fail. Yes.
Right? And then you have the dark of the rails, and in between each rail you can see a perfect exposure all the way through it. It's unbelievable.
It is.
And then if you look at the chair, the snow on the chair on the bottom, you can see the actual granular structure of the snow.
Like sugar.
Exactly,
Yes.
exactly. So this is one of those things, not really pretty, but if you're kind of an exposure buff, this is definitely starting to show that the iPhone itself can make a perfect exposure. Okay, so this photo is me kind of, I really, once again, I have an exposure, or not an exposure, excuse me. This photo here really shows that I like playing with composition a lot. So I'm at a carnival, and we've got the iPhone, still testing it out, but I was able to go from landscape photographer to see how this works kind of as a journalistic type photographer / art photographer.
Yep. A lot of diagonal lines here, a lot of lines, period.
Absolutely, and being able to see in the monitor allowed me to really control the negative space. Because I'm still, once again, I'm not cropping these. I think I cropped this one here just a little bit. But if you look, it's got a perfect, in my eyes, for my feeling of photography, because everybody's got their own, but it's got a perfect use of negative space.
Absolutely. So do you find that you miss looking through a viewfinder of a regular camera as opposed to using the LCD screen to compose your shot?
I definitely have found that the LCD is nice.
Okay.
Any ability to look through something bigger and get your shot it always helps.
Okay.
And that comes from commercial and studio photography, where we're taking pictures and we're pumping them into computers, and we're looking at pictures at 11 by 17.
Sure.
Or 20 by 24. I mean, we're looking at these huge pictures to make sure that the finite details of composition are taken care of. And then, once again, here's another one. We're in Times Square. Now, this does have a really strange filter on it, which is, oh my goodness, I always forget the name of this. It's where diorama is what it's called.
Okay.
So it makes it look like it's a small city type thing, or whatever, the dioramas. And it also has a filter on it from IM, and I have no idea which one, but at the time they had a bunch of filters, and then they switched them about, a year ago.
Okay.
So all the filters I did use are either updated, changed. They're actually much, much better now than I was using at the time.
It has a slight high dynamic range HDR effect.
Yeah, it does. But that was the diorama filter and the IM filter simultaneously, which is a neat thing to know in iPhone photography, is you don't have to use just filters from one app. I don't know if, a lot of people are, always stick to one app or another, and they don't cross-process within the apps.
Right.
But if you shoot it, and I always suggest to shoot in native, the native iPhone app, because that's the best one, simply because, iPhone developed their technology specifically for that software. That you can, I would consider that shooting raw type of stuff. But you can actually export or save that photo with the filter on it and open it up in another app, and then save that out and then open it up again in another app, and just keep opening that photo. And you can get and that's kind of what this one did. It ended up very strange, very punchy, very granular, and I think it gave the feeling of the city, because you can tell it's a little moist.
Yes.
And it makes it, to me, it gives it kind of that.
The clouds are kind of.
Gray and stuff.
Yeah.
It's.
That's what's interesting. It's the gray clouds with the colorful foreground. It's a contrast.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
And it feels like you can go all the way down the street.
Yeah. So does your book go into a lot about the filters, or?
Absolutely. There's a whole chapter on filters. There's a whole chapter on this one. Once again, too. This is filters.
Okay.
Same kind of thing, but still haven't pushed the iPhone far.
All right.
I've done some compositional studies. I've done some landscape studies, on exposure studies, and now I'm really interested in how does it capture people.
Right, right.
Because if a camera can capture people really well and create artistic images from people, then you've really got something.
So is this shot through a window?
This is where it gets kind of cool. So this is in the Longmont Rec Center.
Okay.
It is actually a kid carrying a tube up towards the slides. So I'm able to get an interesting photograph. While the kid, the slide or the rails on the side are all glass. They're all splashy and wet.
Yes.
And you see the staircase, and then all of a sudden you say, "Oh, that is a kid holding a clear tube," and so. And I wasn't, picked out of a crowd being some freak taking photographs of kids in a swimming pool.
Right.
It's not. You just don't want that. You pop out your big giant DSLR and they're going to be, "Excuse me, sir, you need to go." And also, I didn't invade anybody's privacy. I noticed all these kids going up, and I was like, I can make this a cool shot.
Yeah,
so I just walked over, and that's actually my son running up there. So it's not just a random kid. But we were able to take that picture. It took me 2-3 minutes to take it because, I wanted to frame it properly. So I didn't crop the framing on this, but I did try several different effects on this and really push the contrast on this as well.
So are you finding that you're a lot more spontaneous when you're carrying your phone around?
Oh, absolutely. A little more spontaneous, more likely to actually be able to take a shot because I always have my phone on me. So once again, this is that same photojournalistic kind of, still studying the camera, and really enjoying the composition on the big screen. But this is kind of the total shifting point for me. When I saw this, remember the old Kodachrome?
Yeah.
Which makes, starts giving you an idea how long I've been taking pictures. But this has that authentic 1960s Kodachrome look.
Absolutely, absolutely. I was going to say that. I mean, this looks like something from an antique photo or from a different era.
Absolutely. Yeah. And what was great about it is the colors are still, I have control of the colors because it's a modern digital photograph. But if you look at, once again, the exposure through here, like if you look at the car against those white rails, you can actually see the modulation in the stain in the old portions of the car.
Yes.
Which starts saying, this iPhone thing's grabbing all the information. I mean, if you look at like the tent or the top and the bottom, you can see all the wrinkles. You really start seeing the difference between textures and cloth and steel and organic corns. It's just kind of, this image amazed me.
And the carnival theme too.
Right.
It's sort of an Americana kind of thing, so it fits so well with it.
And then putting using the app and putting the film stripes down the side of it, make so many people that have seen this, without telling them, they really start thinking that this is a scan.
Yeah.
So obviously I had a good day at the carnival, but and this goes again, trying to see, can I capture people?
Right.
So I just nailed this perfect 1970s shot, and then I switch filters and I get this gorgeous warm photograph of my daughter walking through a corn or a haystack maze with corn behind her. And if you see, there's right to the right of her face, and I'm guessing if it's on the screen, it's right to the left of her face, because it would be facing, right?
Yes.
Right. There, you can see the flare.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And so that tells you right where the sun is.
Yes, absolutely.
And to capture, once again, shooting into the sun, not totally into it, but enough for flare, and to capture this type of exposure, if you start really analyzing the details of this exposure, it's phenomenal that this was taken in a matter of seconds with the iPhone.
It's kind of backlit, and her face, though, is not in shadow or silhouetted.
Right.
So there's a lot of detail in that face.
And you can actually, so I just blew it up a little bit.
Yeah.
You can actually see the painting on her face. Her face is face painted.
Yeah.
And you start realizing, in that hay,
Right, you can see all
What?
the individual pieces of straw, and
Yeah, it's and so
it's not burned out.
no, it's not burned out. I mean, you see the flare, but and then over there in that upper left-hand corner, you see that little just glimpse of grass, and you know, what a great tool. What a great tool.
Nice composition as well.
So this is my daughter again, and this is one of those shots where now I'm looking at spontaneity.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there's a place where all the kids go around here to go jump, and there's foam blocks and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
So my daughter jumps in and says, "Look, Dad," and I'm like, "Stay right there." And I was able to pull out my camera, hold it over her, take a picture, look at it, and I was done. And to me, in a lot of ways, this had that, you know, especially being a commercial photographer and years and years of practicing
Setting
to
up and
to set it up to make it look
you
spontaneous.
wrote a book about lighting.
Right.
It's like,
I was able to take a spontaneous photograph and get a commercial result.
yes.
You know, and this is actually on IM, which is an app, but it's this is on Getty, and you know, actually every shot in this is on Getty.
Let's stop for a second. So you do what's called a lot of stock photography,
With my iPhone, yes.
which you're represented by Getty.
Yeah, well, I'm represented by IM that has a Getty collection.
Okay.
So I have about 600 photos on Getty. IM has about 800 photos, and then there's those photos intermingle with their partners.
Okay.
So I sell about anywhere from $50 to $250 worth of work, you know, a month.
Okay. And these would be people who are looking for photographs to illustrate some project they're working on.
Absolutely.
And then they would buy from your collection.
Yeah, to give you an idea, one of the shots I did, it was all my kids, well, I was actually at a kid's party. My wife put together this superhero party. It was fantastic. And I've got all these kids lined up in their Superman capes that my wife had made. It's got, you know, the organic star on the back, and everybody's like this, and they're all, so through Getty, oh my gosh, it just blew my mind. The Guardian from Holland,
Okay.
Guardian Holland, was on the front page. Right?
I love it.
Yeah, they paid $15. Woo! All right, so this will be my last, I hope, carnival type shot. You know?
Okay.
You could tell that at this moment, you know, I was really still testing it. But one of the other things that is a huge test for cameras, and I hear this all the time, is I can't get photographs of people in motion. Okay, so that
it will blur them?
it'll blur them.
Okay.
And I hear that all the time on the iPhone. So I wanted to test it. I thought, oh yeah, it's going to fail there.
This is kind of dark, actually.
Yeah,
They're in the darker part of in this cornfield.
they're actually, yeah, they're in the corn maze.
Yeah.
And this is my son and his best friend, and obviously sword fighting. Nobody's getting the best of each other. But if you look at it, it's dead focused
Absolutely.
all the way through. I mean, you look at this
there's
kid,
no blur,
and they're not holding it like that. They're literally swinging.
Yeah.
This captures them while they're
Contact
swinging.
is being made.
Absolutely. And if you look at this, you can see that, yeah, exactly. It's
Yeah.
they're playing, I capture it, and they're in motion. So the iPhone once again convinces me that it's still a good camera.
So did it pick this setting itself, or were you able to manipulate some of the settings so that it wouldn't blur, or?
It was fully on auto,
Amazing.
and I just pointed it and kept touching the screen while they were doing it. I have about 15 of these. You know, and that's what I tell everybody when they're taking pictures with any camera.
Yes.
Is don't take one, take
Right.
30.
Yeah.
And then if your camera's inspiring you, like you're seeing the pictures and you're interested, keep taking pictures. Don't stop, because the photographic moment can disappear.
Yeah.
And while you're there, you know, and you've got a camera, take the picture. So hopefully you start seeing here through some of these photos, I have a little bit of a style that, you know, I like unusual compositions.
And a lot of diagonals.
Lots of diagonals, lots of texture.
Yeah.
This is one of my most favorite photos in the whole wide world. And really, I mean, those are my son's feet. And those are also my son's shoes that were his favorite shoes for a while. He never took them off. Right? And so those shoes are gone.
Right.
You know, and my son's feet are now bigger. And I actually have this in my house too, blown up. This is great. You can actually see it from all over our house.
Fun.
And but this is a 20 by 30, and you cannot see the granular structure at all. At all.
So, and we're talking, is this a 12 megapixel camera? Something like that?
I believe
The 6 is 12, I think.
yeah, and this is still iPhone 5.
Okay.
So I think this was like 8 or 10 megapixel. Okay. But at the same time, megapixel is theoretic when it comes to the iPhone and how it captures. You know, because I've got 14 and 16 megapixel cameras that have full frame chips.
Right.
It's big ones.
Yes.
So you can't have bigger chips, lower chips. If that chip was bigger, it would be 12 megapixels. It's kind of how that looks. But what happens is Apple has amazing software. You always judge the camera on
there are a lot of
the software.
8 megapixel DSLRs that would not be able to blow up to 20 inches.
Right.
In print.
Yeah, so the iPhone itself, if you've got a crystal clear, perfectly exposed picture, which is the goal, you can blow that up to 16 by 20. This one here is a little romantic in my compositional scenarios, but I wanted to just be able to show that you can be sitting there. I was actually talking on the phone and the sun came through the window and I thought, oh, that's pretty. And I just turned the phone around while I was on speaker and took this picture. So now I'm multitasking while I'm taking photos. Talking on the phone, I'm taking pictures.
Yes.
And when I'm done with the picture, I upload it to Getty. And you can't do that with your DSLR. You just can't. And I'm not saying get rid of your DSLR, but I'm saying for sure in the next 5 years, professionals will have DSLRs only. Yeah. And the DSLRs that the professionals will have will be mind-boggling. So
this is fun, shot into the strong light in the window, and the orchids in the foreground are just great.
Well, and I exposed this 3 different ways. Okay. In the book I talk about this. There's 3 different exposures.
Okay.
Not in this shot. This is only one of the exposures from that study, which I always explain photography is there's kind of a light exposure, a dark exposure, and then there's a middle exposure.
Yes.
I pushed this one to make sure that I was getting detail in the lights so I could get all this, because it was going away. In the middle, that cross was there, or was gone when it was in the really bright.
Okay.
So I said, well, I want to get detail in the brights, detail in the darks, and so it made everything else darker.
Okay, so you have versions of this where you combine the 3 exposures then?
No, I didn't combine them. I took 3 different exposures.
Okay.
So with an iPhone, you can actually touch the brighter spot, and it'll expose for the brighter spot, or touch the darker spot, and it'll expose for the darker spot. And so I believe on this one, I went to expose for the brighter spot, so you can start seeing that detail in there, and that's what made the rest of it dark. Because when you go the opposite, expose for the darker, it just blows everything out in something like this.
And now we're moving into some portraits. These are all still with the iPhone.
Still with the iPhone. So the answer is right off the bat, yes. I do use Photoshop with these.
Okay.
But using Photoshop as a photographer, I know there's a lot of purists out there, and to purists I say nah, 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 because asking a photographer not to use Photoshop is literally like asking a painter not to use a brush. And realistically, if you want to compete in photography or be a professional in photography in the real world, not in the little genres, but in the real world where you make a living, you will use Photoshop and you will know it like the back of your hand.
Well, even in the days of film and making prints, there was a lot of manipulation.
Everybody thought, it just went through the darkroom and that was it. I spent hours and hours and hours and hours in darkrooms. Yes. All of us did. So this is the cover of my book, Iphoneography Pro. But once again, I was able to get away with something that you could not get away with normally. This is inside the Cheesecake Factory, right in the lobby.
Okay.
So I just said, oh, why don't you lean up there? Nobody stops you from taking pictures.
And you're not bringing in lights?
Not bringing in lights, not, you know. And actually, I did have an LED light on me. I had a little roto light just off to the side.
Good.
Like you can barely tell, but what's amazing is the iPhone is 100% sensitive to the light. So, you know, a 50 or 100 watt LED is almost like a light bank, which took a while for me to get used to.
Yes.
You know, because you can use it as a light fill. And what's neat, once again, you're able to hold it and look through this giant viewfinder, and you can move the light because it's not a heavy camera.
Right.
But yeah, there's not much done to this. I saturated the colors of the orange wall a little bit more, just because it wasn't that punchy.
Okay.
And I really thought, you know, to get away with the teal top, you really needed to have those two colors in more of a harmonious juxtaposition with each other. You know, they needed to contrast each other properly instead of like a muted orange and a bright teal. So I got those colors, you know, I shifted those a little bit. And then I made sure that there was, you know, proper detail in her shorts.
Okay.
Because you've got that granite there. And so it's like this stark break.
And it's sort of a bright white, so to get some detail out of that takes some work.
Yeah, but I was really happy that, you know, it turned out, to me, it looks like a perfectly good fashion shot.
Absolutely.
You know, and compositionally, it's really cool too. All right, so this one seems a lot more difficult than it was. You know, obviously Photoshop, but she is holding the flowers. But, you know, so I put some little fairy dust. Every once in a while you got to add fairy dust to a shot. You just have to do it. And her eyelashes, I kind of drew those out just a little bit.
I love it.
But I handmade the outfit. So it's kind of this weird material that it's a kind of, you know, giant sheets of flexible foam.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of stapled it all together and put it together. If you notice, it's actually like a large hat on her head.
Yes.
And I was able to get it by a mask that looked like that. But and this is photographed in my garage with a white sheet behind her.
So, not really a studio, but kind of
yeah, like
makeshift.
Definitely a studio setting.
Right.
You know, but the one thing I did want to do is be at least realistic enough at this stage in the game. There's some shots later on where, you know, you have to have pro equipment to get the shots.
Yes.
But even at this stage, I wanted to really, now that I believed in the camera and I liked, you know, what the iPhone could do and I trusted the iPhone, I wanted to say, well, let's push the portraiture, because now it's all about the photographer. Because I'm not using anything different. You know, right now it's not the car, it's the driver. I've found that, you know, everybody's got the same iPhone, pretty much. So now I want to show you can stylize things, you can make artistic things, you can really
amazingly creative. Amazingly creative.
You know, I pinkened the roses, obviously. Actually, I think it was the opposite. The roses were
desaturated them, maybe.
No, they were pink. Those are made out of soap. Those are soap roses.
Okay.
You know, and I desaturated the rest of the picture.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And the other thing too, that's, you know, obviously she wasn't. I removed the skin, or I photoshopped in the skin to make it look like she wasn't wearing a top, because she actually had a top on.
Good, nicely done.
Yeah.
And how do you make fairy dust?
Oh, well, it's a fairy dust brush. Believe it or not, it is a fairy dust brush from Ron's Brushes. I keep telling everybody. I'm one of those firm believers that if, you know, it's like magic. If photographers let out their tricks, that means we have to move on to new tricks.
Okay.
To stay professionals. And if you look what's happened in the last 10 years in photography, pros have gotten good. Like, not just good, but great. There are photographers out there now that they are tricking the eye in ways we never even thought the eye could be tricked. There are styles and techniques that are coming out, and there's photos that are visually just stunning, but stunning in the way they compel you to look at them. And if you look through photography through the history of it, it just keeps getting better and better and better and better. So I'm a firm believer in let's get the tricks out and let everybody know how to do it, and we can just keep making new tricks to stay professionals.
Great.
Now this photo here, obviously I've already gone through photographing the models and stuff like that. That was part of the book and part of my process. And now I'm thinking, well, maybe I can make some really cool professional moments.
Okay.
Because I see this as it's still that photo illustration-ish, where I'm actually illustrating with a set versus a computer. So this is all done in camera.
Right.
Yes, these are real locations,
yes,
but they're artificial scenarios. So it technically, I don't know, what would you call that? I call it, it's kind of an illustration, a painting, or, it's just a creative photographic moment.
This is not a studio background.
Not at all. Real world.
Real world. But the way it's lit and everything else gives it very much a studio kind of quality.
Yeah, and once again, I don't have to use a lot of lights because the iPhone in the dark, it's pitch black out here. And the iPhone in the dark is so sensitive that you can get all sorts of amazing photographs. And this is where, once again, I really want to inspire is let's use the iPhone to push boundaries a little bit.
Yes.
Because this is just a buddy of mine with my great-grandfather's ukulele and some overalls by the train tracks. But it comes across as something much more.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it actually makes me think of, even though it's not even close, it just makes me think of like the old South. Mostly because of the overalls and the way the guy is.
The baggy pants and the rail line.
Yeah. And even though, I don't know if the rail line has any, it just makes me feel that way.
Yeah.
But this is when I really, knew for a fact the iPhone could actually create commercial photographs that were very useful.
Now, some commercial photography, stock photography houses limit the kinds of photos that can be submitted. Has that changed a lot?
Oh yeah. iPhone photography is all over the place.
Large form, medium format, whatever, or very, very high resolution photos.
It is totally different now. Totally different. And anybody who's not on the iPhone or cell phone camera bandwagon is losing out, because there's been a whole shift in advertising and marketing. If you look at a lot of your television commercials and stuff like that, it's these impulse moments, more so.
Right.
We're allowed to see our world, and now we expect to see our world that way. It's like a generational scenario. And there's nothing wrong though with shooting something that you thought would be great during the day, go to that exact same location and photograph it at night with some lights. LED lights, you can get them at B&H or Adorama for $20. I've got a couple lights for like literally $9.99 because they were just on sale. And a flashlight is an amazing light for the iPhone. Like you should try it. Go outside with your iPhone at night, put a flashlight on somebody's face, and you will be boggled at how well, because we're going back to remember how well it did with the landscapes.
Right.
It does the same thing with a flashlight at night. And if you look at the lighting on this looks like it took hours.
It does. It looks like a studio.
We were so in and out of there. There were so many mosquitoes. It was like 15 minutes. Okay. Now this one, I am using a studio light, but it's not a flash.
Okay.
Okay, so this is...
You have nothing on an iPhone that would trigger a flash, do you?
No, and flash doesn't work. So everything has to be, monolights or continuous.
Yes.
Everything has to be continuous lighting. But what's great is, these are my kids at my front door.
It's kind of an E.T. moment.
It is exactly. I was telling my daughter, point up in the sky and pretend like something's coming. And then my son turns around and he's like, can I hug the teddy bear and act scared? And I'm like, do it. And they both do it. And I'm like, this is amazing. You know, but once again, you have this massive light coming in the front door.
Yes.
Look how much detail is in my son's pajama pants.
Yeah, that is absolutely amazing.
When you really start looking at the detail and the different textures, you look at the door, how it's handled, and you look at the tile floor, how it's handled, and there's shadows, and it feels like a very expensive professional camera took this.
I agree.
And this was done on my iPhone. It probably took me it took me longer to set up the lights than it did to take the shot. And that's not normal. So this one, once again, this is photographed at night.
Okay.
And I'm using all 5 lights. Believe it or not, you can see the sky. That sky, the sun set 30 to 40 minutes prior to me taking that, or after I took this picture.
Got some purpleness to it.
Right. Well, that sky, that's what it does. That's what the iPhone does at night.
Okay.
If it's not pitch black. So I was able to use an 8 o'clock sky as fill light. That's crazy.
That is.
I mean, the DSLR just won't even capture this. So I started realizing, oh my goodness, the iPhone can do some stuff way better than the DSLR. And so in the one in the book, there's a little flaw in this. If you look by the chain, I actually did the fire and stuff in Element Effects.
Okay.
And I tried to erase.
Ah.
And you see like a finger swipe from basically the back of her back down to the ground. In the book, that one's perfect.
Okay.
But just to be able to get this is on the, where the, once again, the sugar mill is?
Yes.
And 119, how it kind of curves down there. And there's that chalk area off to the left, or like they've been digging, there's like chalk mounds.
Yes.
That's right there.
Ah, okay.
All of these are shot in Longmont. Every photograph we've seen. So I think that's important to know.
So it's...
I've exposed Longmont in a very strange way.
So you said 5 lights again?
Yeah, I think there's 5 or 6 lights. And in the book, I actually have the diagram of how this was lit.
Very nice.
And I actually have a couple of photos showing, I'm telling the truth. Here's all the lights set up. Here's the girl. This is a local musician, Adrian Osborne.
Oh, nice.
And so we've been friends for quite some time. But I just wanted to have that powerful woman chained down, superhero kind of effect. But once again, especially the one that has the fire fixed, it looks like a high-end commercial photograph that took hours to do.
And there's a lot of movement in there too.
A lot of movement.
And the exposure, well, I don't know. There's a dark background for sure, so.
Yeah, well, and I've got all sorts of different angles of this, and it was actually I was starting to get a little weirded out because the iPhone was starting to be my preferred tool for some of these photographs. So this one's bananas.
It absolutely is.
There's
some fairy dust again.
Well, these are sparkles.
Sparkles, okay.
Sparkles, yes.
Still Ron's or not? Still Ron's?
Yeah, oh yeah, Ron's.
Okay.
If you go, Ron's has got, I don't know, 50,000 different brushes from smoke, like the fire in the last one.
Yeah.
After I got out of Element Effects, I used Ron Fire and Explosions. So now we're on to this photo illustration, which is something that I do a lot of.
Right.
And this is me saying, hey, at a really high-end photography scenario, can I trust the iPhone to give me the ultimate shot that I'm looking for as an illustrative photographer?
Right.
And so this is different pieces and parts, like the shield is a different part, the guy is a different part, the helmet's a different part, the sword's a different part, the background's a different part, and put those all together. The wings are a different part.
So composite photos is...
For sure.
Okay.
And this is what I consider photo illustration.
This is a lot of work.
Yeah. The shadows are painted in. You can see that there's an artificial flare kicked in there in the bottom by the sword. But the actual flare on the sword is real.
Okay. But the circle is...
Right, the circle's the addition to it.
Right.
But if you, and I don't know if you know this area, as you go past I-25 towards Frederick, like right before you get to Home Depot,
Okay.
and I don't know if you can use all these words, but I'm explaining it. There is a gravel and sand company to the left. I don't know if you guys, all those big giant things of gravel. These are some of the, the background is actually some of the equipment that was just laying around.
Huh.
So I walked up to it, took a photo, and started realizing, oh my goodness, I can use my iPhone to get any kind of backgrounds I want and start using those for my photo illustrations.
All right.
And so I composited this all together. This isn't one of my favorite ones. I think, me personally, I see some failure moments in it, but at the same time, because there's like a few things that aren't perfectly believable, but at the same time, I've got a Roman warrior with wings in the middle of a month. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So at what point should I really start kicking myself?
Right.
I think it's successful compositionally in many ways.
I think so too.
And I really, there's a lot of things I really like about it.
And you did this just to test the capabilities, or was this also did it get used for
This
client,
is
or?
no. This is so none of this stuff was specifically shot. I have one shot that was specifically shot for a client
Okay.
in the iPhone book.
Okay.
But this is once again me saying photo
Exploring.
illustration wise.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden the iPhone, I've pushed it through landscapes, through lighting, through composition studies, through color studies, through all sorts of interesting scenarios, and now I'm like, can I use it for what I do?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I would never sell something like this to a client without knowing for a fact I can do it.
Right.
And most photo illustration in modern photography, at least that I do, is product manipulation.
Mm-hmm.
So I get the broken product, like I just did one. I just got the razor blades that I needed to make look nice and shiny, and I'm getting the prototype of the prototype. And I have to make that prototype look like the best one they'll ever have.
Okay.
That's my job.
Okay.
Here, once again, this is, I love this one and hate this one simultaneously because it's almost too goofy artist for me, but it's got so many amazing textures that are actually truly from the iPhone. Like that middle area from the blue dress down to the rocks is such an incredibly hard thing to do in photography, to get that texture, to get that feeling. And the silhouette behind her is actually the silhouette behind her. This is, Sandstone Park? You ever taken the dinosaur walk around the back of it? This is literally just in the back of Sandstone Park.
Okay. Uh-huh.
And I added in the water.
Right.
Ron's water. But the sky was the same. I put in a couple of things up in the top area, but everything was just like this. She was wearing that costume. She was holding that blanket. Now the blanket was pink, so I turned it yellow.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, and the sunbeam coming down on her, but most of this is actually what it looked like. I've just pushed it a little bit in Photoshop.
It's very much like sci-fi fantasy.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. I like it, but it feels kind of like a book cover.
Yeah, it does.
I could see it be like,
I could too. I can see that too.
Gods from above, foreign angels. I don't know, but there's a lot of things I really do like about it. This one just cracks me up. So this is on my old dock that got washed away with the flood.
Oh.
What was amazing is I used no lights in this. I just kind of set this up.
Right. Okay.
Took the picture, and then in Photoshop I put, obviously the stickers.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, the UFOs, they were there.
The UFOs were there.
Yeah, exactly. And so is the big city in the background. So I mean, this is the first true capturing of a UFO. But yeah, you'll notice my commercial brain. You notice the beer is turned so we don't see the brand, all that kind of stuff. But this is kind of like one of those great comedy I told you so type of shots that just cracks me up.
This could be, did you submit this as a stock photo?
Yeah, this is a stock photo.
Okay.
Now nobody's used it yet, but I'm sure a bunch of people have gotten a good laugh out of it.
Yeah.
You know, the guy that's in the shot, he was my neighbor at the time. He's got two big old ones. He loves it. You know, it's just like this is classic.
Absolutely.
You know, I like being able to show I've got a little sense of humor. And but if you notice, like some of my older shots, or not the older ones, this still has that raw feeling to it.
It does.
And it still has that professional feeling to it. I could see this being, you know, like a card. You know, I told you the end was coming. You know, welcome to 50.
60s look as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Both in the chair and the...
Oh, the chair was the hardest thing to find.
The shirt and the... Well, just fishing and...
Believe it or not, that chair was so hard to find. I called, Walmart didn't have it, and Lowe's didn't have it, and finally, you know, Ace Hardware. All right, so this is, and this is in the book. These are just pieces of things photographed and put together.
Okay.
So obviously, well, I don't know if obviously, the sky's not real in this and the water's not real in this.
All right.
But the 4 ducks are real, and so is the shark that's coming up and eating the spotted duck. And this is called the Ugly Duckling. And the whole idea on this is, you know, the artistic one always gets beat up. And I'm not sure why people beat up on artists. You know, I don't. You're an artist, right?
Right.
You've been picked on for being artistic, right?
Yeah.
And it's mind-boggling. We should start picking on bankers much more. Oh, you're a banker? Yeah. Why don't you do something difficult? But what we've got is, you start looking at, you know, this is definitely where you can start seeing I'm an illustrator.
Absolutely, and I
And
can
the
see
composition
this
is
being used,
unreal.
In an ad where there's text,
Absolutely.
water and things like that.
I was pushing really hard for this to be the cover of my iPhone book.
Okay.
And I even submitted it within that bottom right area. It says iPhone. Da, da, da.
Gotcha.
But I might be able to get away with, I've been going through my head of, you know, putting a book together on photo illustration. But it's definitely commercial. This is, it reeks of word space.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you could put a whole paragraph there.
Absolutely.
I know. Don't pick on artists when you're a banker. All right. Once again, so this is in that same genre.
Right.
And you might be shocked at what is real and what isn't in this one. So this is an assembly of different photographs, but every photograph was taken with the iPhone on all of these.
Wow.
No other cameras were used. This is my iPhone and Photoshop only. So the hook is real, string's not. The
So you just took a picture of a hook with...
yeah, a hook with a knot on it.
And
then I just used the paintbrush tool and put a pen line straight up.
okay.
The fish tank is real, but there's no water in it. All 3 of those fish are real. And to give it more realistic feeling, I had like 6 or 7 of those little fish. They're like kids' toys.
Right.
So I did photograph 3 different ones. Even though they look similar, you can start seeing the one on the left is a little lighter blue.
It's not a mirror of
The one on the right, yeah. And the one in the middle, I think, was the same as the one on the left in color, but it was a little different, like it's got the tweaked fin.
Yes.
So, you know, because all fish look similar, yet they look different. So, and those are little things that you look through as a professional. You know, what do I do? What's my little edge? You know, and analyzing things and making things believable when they're told, because this looks very believable in an unbelievable way.
It does. Exactly said correctly.
And what's amazing about this is the wall isn't there. It's not lit like that. And I mean, the glass is lit like that, but the wall is not there.
Nice.
The table's not there. But you start looking at the shadows that are popped into this. Like down at the bottom, I put like a beveling of shadows to give texture. You know, like I said, it's believably unbelievable.
It's very nicely done, and there's a lot of work that went into doing that. So when you're working on something like this, do you write down the idea or sketch some things out?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And the book actually shows the sketches.
Yes. Okay.
It shows where I started, how, you know, all the pieces I photographed. Because once you get into this type of photography or this type of artwork, I mean, sky's the limit. And you've already kind of seen, like, you know, with the UFOs landing and stuff like that. And so this one here,
this one.
this is the big picture. This is one of the last pictures I did for the iPhone book.
Okay.
Because I kind of had reached my, oh my gosh, I can do whatever I want with the iPhone. I have now mastered the iPhone as a camera, and in my book I give you all the mastery, all the stuff that I did.
Yeah.
But this to me starts saying, I'm not, once again, I'm not trying to be arrogant. I've mastered my craft.
Yeah.
If I can do this with an iPhone, that's a photo of a fake boat in a bottle. And the only thing that's real in this is the boat in the bottle. Everything else is totally artificial.
I love it.
But you look at the composition. There's no reason in this situation that I should see the bottom of the bottle. Right? It doesn't make, it's quirky.
Yeah, yeah.
And so what I'm trying to, you know, I wanted to have that, why is the water sloshing? Because you didn't ask. Visually you don't ask because you can see the bottom of the bottle, so you know it's already ajar.
Right.
And you know, the water is by rays, you know, raised brushes and stuff. The steel shelf is just made in a 3D program. The wall is, you know, this is a great technique, being able to do that with walls and stuff. And a lot of people, you see like these photographs in catalogs, and everybody, you know, a lot of people try and emulate it, and they're, why can't I light it like that? And it's because it's not lit.
It's not lit, okay.
It's fake, right? And so there's a clipping path around it. So this one is probably the most fake one, but it's also
realistic. That's it's humorous.
Right.
Because the boat looks so realistic, the water looks so realistic, and it's like this storm inside of a bottle.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you said that, because that's kind of how I felt about what the iPhone was. It really is.
A storm in a bottle
itself. Yeah, it is. And I don't think we've even come close to seeing what we're getting ready to get from the iPhone. I think we are going to, as a society and as photographers, be mind-boggled. And actually, at the end of the book, I have a warning that truly warns photographers, especially professionals, get on the bandwagon, know your equipment beyond a shadow of a doubt. I was part of the film guys moving to digital.
Yes.
And when I moved to digital in Boulder, I took over almost 65% of the clients, the actual companies shooting became my clients, because I was one of the most advanced digital photographers at the time. Now we're in this position of, you better start finding things that you can shoot that people can't do with their iPhone.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And diversify. And so this is that's why you pigeonholed when you were shooting on 4x5. I understand that, because you're shooting on a 4x5. You need to be good at photographing tennis shoes or whatever. I've photographed plenty of tennis shoes.
And you need to be really good at setting it up.
Exactly.
And taking lots of time.
But now, at this day and age, there's no reason why the CEO's daughter or the marketing person's daughter or son with an iPhone and some white paper can't shoot a catalog. There's just no reason. And if they're really creative, you see right there, they can go out and photograph things at night.
Right.
For stylish photographs. And the photos themselves are complicated. They look super complicated. They look like pros are doing it. You know, I'm a pro, so I have some compositional.
But you have some vision and
ability
to see.
But I've been shooting for 32 years, so I've been visioning and seeing, and as a photographer, I went to a lecture once, 20 years ago, said, I have many successes, and I will never show you my failures.
Yes.
Yeah, I just won't. Oh, so this one here, this is great. This is another kind of test.
Right.
So obviously it's a photo illustration, but if you've ever taken big cameras and tried to photograph small things, It's a pain.
This is the field there.
Right. This is a toy car.
It's a Oldsmobile, isn't it? 442 or something.
Yeah, well, it's the Dukes of Hazzard car, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right. It's not the exact one because I couldn't use that in the book, but it's their version of I think it's who makes these little cars? Matchbox.
Yes.
It's like the Matchbox, unlicensed Dukes of Hazzard car. There's no rebel flag. You can't do that. You can't put out a rebel flag on anything in the United States anymore, right? So, yeah, I mean, it's one of those things when you skip through photography, you can miss a lot of nuances. But I think what happens, and you start seeing even with this, when you really look at it, there's the professional nuances to a lot of these.
Yes.
That, especially this one, I'm photographing a toy car.
Mm-hmm.
I am forcing the iPhone, which is very difficult to do. I'm forcing the iPhone, because I'm so used to shooting with it now, to give me low depth of field.
Ah, okay.
Right?
All right.
How do you do that?
Mm-hmm.
By using some of the lens attachments.
All right.
Putting lenses on an iPhone, is not a bad thing. Carrying them around is a little bit of a pain.
A physical lens.
Physical lens, yeah.
Okay.
iPro lens. So it's one of the companies, they're actually made by Schneider. So Schneider lenses
Very high quality.
Oh my goodness,
Yeah.
they're one of the gods of lenses.
Yes.
They go into making some of these lenses for the iPhone, and they're probably the most unbelievable thing that ever happened to the iPhone camera. But using the iPhone with a little tiny lens on a studio set, and I actually have in the book, I have pictures of this studio set.
Nice.
There was nothing to it. You start getting big cameras in there, it's a huge pain in the butt because you're like trying to reach over the camera and you've got lighting, because what you don't see on this is, once again, I'm using LED lights, but I'm also using, remember the foam material I used to make that girl's outfit?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, I used a lot of that in product photography. That's why I have a bunch of it. And it's like $3 or $4 over here at Marshall's. I think Marshall's or not Marshall's, what's that? Michael's. And you can buy it in all sorts of different colors. It's a cool foam. But if you take it and you roll it together and staple it, then you've got a tube.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And it's a bounce tube. Okay? So people use bounce like this. It's always like these flat sheets. Mm-hmm. Well, what happens is you start getting into the nuances, and what makes me a professional and somebody who's trying to be a professional, trying to get to my shots, fail, is that I'm using round bounces or curved bounces. So that means I'm allowing the light to modulate and fluctuate even in its reflection.
Right.
Because no matter what, light moves at a distance, you have that distance from the bounce, and if it goes this way, then your light on the actual subject changes.
Absolutely.
And that's how you start looking at the car on here, and you start thinking, that's pretty well lit for a toy car.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of modulation and a lot of texture. And so...
So you're using that foam as a reflector kind of thing?
As a bounce.
As a bounce,
Yeah.
right. So you're shining light on that,
Yeah.
which bounces with some texture and variation.
Absolutely.
On the subject you're doing.
Yeah.
Very neat.
And also use mirrors, and use, they have black foam as well. So now you can actually integrate that. It can look like a spider's nest by the time you're done, but no one else, including me, can technically light it that way again, which makes it an individual moment. I can light it similarly, but once you tear down a set that you've been working on an hour, like this took me about an hour.
Oh, cool. How very neat.
To put together. And you'll see, like if you ever go to my website, some of the product photography on there truly is, I dare you to go try and do it. It's some of the, like simple shots, like you'll see a can, and you're like, well, that can looks okay. Well, with the amount of lighting and Photoshop and all that kind of stuff, by the time you're done, it's totally different. This is the only commercial shot from the book. I had to put one in. In the book, I have a couple. I did a food shoot.
Okay.
So this is with my telephoto lens that I have
for your iPhone.
For my iPhone. And voila, a bowl of soup.
Looks delicious.
It does. And this one's kind of, I didn't want to go into the food too much. In the book, there's quite a few food shots. But because I've built a fairly decent reputation as a food photographer. I've shot a lot of food, and I've moved away from it quite a bit, not on purpose. Just I'm moving not away from the photography, but I've embraced what I see as the new vision of photography and video, which is fully mobile. So I have 3 4K video cameras that are all the exact same that can sync digitally.
Yes.
And then I have steady cams, drones, and all that kind of stuff, and then lights. So I can show up and document a scenario overwhelmingly.
In a number of ways.
In a number of ways. And now and add the still photography and just do it. Like I took all my lights that are not battery operated, but they plug in.
Yes.
I've replaced half of my kit with full battery lights.
Gotcha.
So that I'm fully mobilized, just 100%. I see that as the future of professional photography and video. I need you in a place where I can't get my iPhone. And as I mentioned earlier, you need to, as a professional, figure out how you're going to stay alive and make money, especially in this kind of environment here in Colorado.
Right.
Because less people are going to, when you were a professional when the film was out and stuff like that, it was literally like a career like a doctor. You worked your way out, you could get a job in a heartbeat.
Yes.
Sorry. And you could get a good job in a heartbeat. Now you
have to be really different. You have to be
super different. And then are you going to last the trend?
Right.
Because a lot of really successful artists, and you see it a lot in music as well, they're very successful for a short period of time and they die broke.
Right.
I've got 2 kids that plan on me not dying broke. And I'm very realistic about this. And that's one of the reasons we've diversified into portraiture.
Yes.
Portraiture is one of those things, and every year we try and do a better and better and better job, and make it harder and harder and harder for other photographers to compete against us, because portraiture is important first off for the memories. And that's kind of what made me get into it. As I saw my kids' photographs, and I was like, I can do way better than that. And so we've really worked hard to do that here for our local people. And we're not trying to expand outside of that for the portraiture. We're not looking at Boulder or looking at Loveland or Longmont, Niwot.
And you said how many portraitures a year? Some,
and obviously some of the kids are repainted, but it's about 12,000 portraits of youth children in Longmont per year.
Phenomenal.
And each one we take, ultimate care, and all of our people are like totally qualified. We don't hire anybody who does not have a degree in photography. And the other thing too is they have a degree in photography. They still need to be a little worried about talking to a guy like me who's been doing it 30 years and sponsored by 10 companies and written 3 books on photography.
Right.
Because you get those guys that are right out of school or girls, just totally cocky. Oh, I'm a photographer and I'm amazing. It's like, you're amazing in 30 years. And even right now, I don't see myself as amazing. I see myself as very lucky, very analytic on not only the photographs I take, but the actual industry. How do you succeed? How do you make it so the only thing you do is photography or video? Because, and I guess the way I put it is, if it has a lens, I know how to shoot it.
I also like what you said about your method of say, picking up the iPhone. I imagine you've done this with almost any camera that you've owned. Is that you go through the whole range of things very methodically.
Yes.
Lighting, composition, many things that you actually dig deep into along the way.
Well, and that goes back to the old school training of photography. Is photography itself, especially with the film and the chemicals and the exposures and the cameras. I mean, we were chemists,
yes.
We were mathematicians, and we were artists.
And you could adjust all of those variables.
Right, but you had to understand the variables to adjust them.
Yeah.
And that's what I see right now in the younger photographers coming up is they've been shooting digitally so much and they've got that microwave instant satisfaction of seeing it that they forget or they just don't notice or they just overlook the nuances.
Right.
And if you look at the great photographers of our historical past, they were all nuance fanatics.
Absolutely.
Just
and mathematical about it
yes,
in some ways.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, it's like Mapplethorpe, he wasn't really enjoyed by many people outside of the artistic community. However, in the artistic community, they were very aware of the compositional nuances that he was pushing, and also the subject matter, things he was pushing, and also the lighting and the photography and the personality. I mean, he was the real deal, and it was a shame that he passed away as he was becoming famous.
Right.
But at least he got to do what he wanted to, which was leave something behind.
And even Ansel Adams, you can find drawings that he did of prints that he was working on.
Right.
Where he would analyze in mathematical ways, just in different parts of the photo where the exposure was there, where it was here, and draw it out and really work it through in the print.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I think you start seeing after you see all my photography is you might not like my composition, but that composition is that way for an exact reason.
Right.
It wasn't a mistake. And it was,
intentional.
every single portion of every photograph I showed was intentional. So these aren't, there's no whoopsie daisies.
Right.
There might be instantaneous moments.
It's not luck, but
right, exactly.
Yeah.
I
have to ask on this photo, there's very little shadow around the scallions or the mushroom.
Yeah, there's a giant white bounce card on the left,
Okay.
and a window on the right.
So you didn't use the foam thing on that?
No, this
Okay.
is.
Okay.
No, I blew everybody's mind just by having my iPhone on a tripod. No, I used foam core.
Okay.
So, and I think that's it. Yeah, see.
So you do a broad range of photography, not just iPhone, and a lot of it is on your website. How would I find your website?
It is www.morrisseyphoto.com.
Okay.
And hopefully that is right underneath me while I'm saying that. And you can call us or email us, and we always like taking a look at every project. We might be out of your budget, we might be right on your budget, but the one thing that is very different about my approach on the company is if we can't do it, we'll at least help you find somebody that can do it, or you can call us and ask questions about whoever's doing it, because there's a lot of, photography is a very weird industry.
And changing quickly.
Well, it's one of those industries where a lot of people pick up a camera, say they're a photographer after 6 months, and if you hire that person, they actually might be using somebody else's portfolio. Happens way more than you think. And it's even happened to me. I've hired assistants that, oh yeah, great portfolios, all this kind of stuff, and then all of a sudden, when you sit down and verify them and check them out, or you bring them onto a job because it's really, you have no choice, you need this person immediately or somebody immediately, they know nothing.
Whoops.
Yeah, I got a ditch digger. So it's been very nice speaking to you guys about iPhone photography, and I really, want to push the fact that I've written a book on this, and the book is designed from a professional point of view to inspire photographers of all different levels of expertise. And I think who I've found anyway that are the most inspired on this with the book and the iPhone and the lighting and all the things that I talk about are the younger professionals and the just, you've got those go-to amateurs that really love taking pictures. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I can't say enough about how much time and energy I took putting that book together. It took me almost 3 years to write that book. Mm-hmm. Part of that 3 years is because I started on the iPhone 3, and as soon as we were getting ready to publish, it had the iPhone 4, and I refused at that time to upgrade because the iPhone 4 wasn't much different than that. And then, okay, so we're getting ready to publish, I got the iPhone 5, and finally we were able to call the point at iPhone 6. And now we're on, what, iPhone a million?
No doubt.
Yeah. But absolutely, the iPhone camera is one of those things where you need to, as a person, as a consumer, as a photographer, as a professional and amateur, and even semi-pro, take it very seriously. And I believe, especially as you look through the book and you see these pictures, I've proven that I can compete on a professional high-end level with the iPhone. Mm-hmm. So if you've got the gumption, jump out there and you can do it as well. Well, I want to thank you for watching this edition of Behind Closed Doors. I hope all the things we talked about help you with your daily iPhoneography situations and projects, but now I've got to go.